PDL Season 9 has arrived. An exciting time, no doubt, for everyone involved in this league. If you watched Monday's video, you already saw my set against the Windsor Whiskash. Much like in past seasons, I am doing my own gameplay on Monday and commentary over all the other replays later in the week. In past seasons, I've done that on Fridays. This season, I'm thinking Thursdays. And that, of course, is what this video is. So we'll get to that commentary in a moment. First, let's check the standings. Here are the standings going into week 1. If you watched Monday's video, you know the result already between the Toronto Rockslide and the Windsor Whiskash. That will be reflected in the table along with the other week 1 results next week. But if you don't know what happened, go back and watch it. And with the standings out of the way, it is time now to look at trades. It never feels like a sure thing that there are going to be trades before anyone has even played a set, but there are some week 1 trades this season. There certainly are. There are some coaches that made some adjustments before they had played at all. And so we'll take a look at a couple of images here. First, the Grounded Punching Bags dropped Cursula and picked up Delmise. Now, I'm not exactly sure what happened here. It seemed like there was a little bit of a mix-up in their draft plan. I mentioned before that the draft was a little bit on the slow side, with every coach having 12 hours per pick, and quite a bit of that time being used sometimes. I got the impression that the Punching Bags coach got... I mean, I don't want to overstate it or anything, but I think their draft plan got away from them a little bit, and Cursula wasn't really what they wanted. But given that they picked it in the very last round of the draft, in a free agent spot, it was not very hard to swap it out and make an adjustment. Couple of notes, by the way. I realized while I was making this image that I forgot to do the usual thing I did, which is for each roster, use an asterisk to mark each of the 4 free agent slots so that you know what Pokemon they can freely swap out over the course of the season. That didn't make it into the draft recap because I just forgot to do it, but it will be done in all these images from now on, and you can see that the Punching Bags were able to swap out Wobbuffet, Kangaskhan, Stonjourner, and also Cursula, which in fact they did. Also, I put the wrong colors on these arrows. I got the colors backwards, but I don't care to fix that one. Basically they've traded one slow Trick Room attacking ghost type for another one. I don't believe either Cursula or Delmise can set its own Trick Room. I'm not actually sure what can on this team. Maybe it's just something to throw at opposing Trick Room teams. I don't know if Grimmsnarl gets Trick Room. It might. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past Stonjourner to learn it, but I'm not sure. In any case, one slow ghost type for another one. I don't know what exactly it is that they're looking for in Delmise that they're not satisfied with from Cursula. Cursula is a special attacker, Delmise physical. Cursula, they both have interesting support move pools. Delmise gets some stuff like Ally Switch and Whirlpool. Maybe they were looking at something like that. Delmise, of course, gets a couple of extra stabs with the grass typing and with Steelworker giving it effectively stab on steel type attacks. So maybe it plugs some holes in their team that Cursula doesn't, but I'm not exactly sure. And I'm not going to think too hard about that right now because there's one other set of trades to get to, and it is unprecedented in my experience in this league. Unfortunately, always sad when this happens, there has been a coaching change already this season. The original coach of the Dreamyard Darkrais has had to step away. As usual, I don't know why, and I'm sure it's none of my business. But there is a replacement coach. It is PDL Commissioner Reckless Trico. I will, this one time, shout out their YouTube channel, Reckless Trico, and try to remember to link it in the description. But they have said that they will not be uploading this season, given that they're busy, offline, and didn't plan to play in the first place and only joined as a replacement coach. I think that's understandable. So definitely do go check out their content, but do not expect to find this season there this time. But they have past PDL seasons and some other stuff that they've been doing. In any case, Reckless Trico was given the opportunity, as is standard when there's a replacement coach of the PDL, to make 3 changes for free without counting toward the trade limit, and to any slot on the roster, not just the 4 free agent slots. And let me tell you, they went above and beyond with this roster. Reckless Trico swapped out 3 Pokemon that they would not normally be able to, and also went ahead and used up 3 of their free agent trades. And so we are doing basically a full party swap here, and that's why I've built up the suspense to this image that I'm about to show you. The Dreamyard Darkrais have dropped Darkrai, Lucario, Behem, Aggron, Absols, and Pangoro, and picked up Zapdos, Celebi, Dreadnought, Pichu, Dragonite, and Cofagrigus. I do know 2 things that motivated this set of trades for sure. Obviously, a majority of their roster spots changed. This is a massive overhaul of this team. I do know a couple things that motivated this. Number 1, The original Darkrais roster had a lot of fighting weaknesses. A lot of dark types and other fighting weaknesses, Lucario and Aggron also being weak to dark. This is something that Trico talked about in the Discord. Of the 6 Pokemon that they dropped, 1 resists fighting, and all of the other 5 are weak to it, with Aggron having a double weakness. Meanwhile, Zapdos, Celebi, and Dragonite all resist fighting. Cofagrigus is immune, and of this group, only Dreadnought is weak, joining Obstagoon and Zoroark as the remaining fighting weaknesses on this team. So I think that was one of the first things that Trico recognized in this roster. They certainly talked about it a lot in the Discord, just a ton of fighting weaknesses, wanted to do something to patch that up. But also, this gives them a little bit more of a rain mode to work with. So this team already has Politoed, which of course sets rain, and Therian Tornadus, which can take advantage of the rain with Hurricane, attacking with a higher speed stat than the Incarnate form, and there's no Bleak Wind Storm in this game because we're playing Sword and Shield, and that was a Legends Arceus invention, but it can throw off that accuracy-boosted Hurricane all the same. This team now is a little bit more going for it rain-wise, with Dreadnought getting Swift Swim, and being able to Gigantamax and use Gmax Stone Surge to set up Stealth Rock on the field while also attacking, so I think it's a Water-type attack too, if I'm not mistaken. So it gets rain boosted. Maybe it's rock type. I think it's water. Maybe it's rock. It gets rain boosted. If it's water type, I could look this one up. And it also sets stealth rock, so it'll be harder for opponents to pivot around the offensive pressure from the Swift Swim speed boosted Dreadnought. Dragonite is another Hurricane user if they want. It's also just a very strong Pokemon. Obviously stronger on the physical side, but Hurricane, Dragonite, special attacking, or mixed could be an interesting mix-up some week. Zapdos can benefit from the rain. It can set rain itself manually, and it also can benefit from the rain with Thunder. I don't remember whether it gets Hurricane in Gen 8. I think it might. So overall, just a stronger rain mode for this team. Celebi gives them a grass type to mix in there. Pichu, of course, gives them lightning rod support, although without the stats that Raichu or Pikachu would bring to the table. Stone Surge is water type, so it is rain boosted, and also sets stealth rock. Celebi is a little bit tricky with all those exploitable weaknesses that it has, but it has solid stats, base 100 across the board. It has a pretty good support move pool with things like, I don't know, Ally Switch, Poland Puff, Helping Hand, I think. I vaguely remember using Celebi in Sword and Shield Series 13 and running moves like those. It also can play in a size spam mode with Azelf, throw off reasonably strong Expanding Force. They lose a Trick Room setter in Behem, but gain one, I think, in Cofagrigus. So not too much sacrifice there, and Dragonite is just a stronger Pokemon, and Celebi too, and Zapdos, than a lot of what was traded away. I'm not necessarily sure what Pangoro and Absol and Aggron were bringing to the table, but I think they get just net more power with some of these swaps. Plus managing the fighting weaknesses, plus the rain mode. A little unfortunate to see the Darkrai go. I was looking forward to it popping off this season, although it was pointed out in the Discord, and I'm not going to fact check this myself, that Celebi is in Sword and Shield and Darkrai is not, so at this point I think all of the mythical Pokemon in the draft do exist in Sword and Shield, which makes things a little bit simpler in terms of learn sets and challenge codes, which is maybe for the best in this weird format that we're playing. So that's a plus as well. And I think Absol gets Perish Song. I don't know that this team has any ideas about running Perish Song. There's not really any trapping except maybe like a Whirlpool user, but they haven't lost that because Celebi gets Perish Song too, so if they want to get really creative, they have that option. Anyway, this is definitely the most Pokemon I've ever had to put onto one of these trade slides, but gives the team a little bit of a clearer identity, although it's still going to be interesting to see what they do with this massive overhaul of someone else's draft over the course of the season. But with that said, those are the trades for week 1, and I think we can move on to the replays now. And if you're watching this and you made a trade that isn't reflected, it'll show up next week. It's just a question of, did you trade before you played week 1? Anyway, replay time. Okay, commentary time. As always, going through each of the sets from week 1, except my own, which was in Monday's video. All of these chronologically in the order in which they were played. The commentary always feels a little bit weird in the early weeks because I don't know these rosters super well from memory yet, so I can't speculate at all about what other Pokemon these coaches could have brought to this matchup instead, or why they didn't bring those, because I don't remember what else they have. But And of course, we'll also feel out their playstyles over the course of the season, get a look at how they want to use these teams. Genuinely, one of the reasons I do this is for content, but also another one is to scout how these coaches play, because I do think I get a little bit of a benefit from that as a participant in this league myself. All that said, we're going to start off with the very first set played in PDL Season 9, and that is between the Elegancy and, I meant to look up how to say it, but I didn't, the Ontario Oguris. The Elegancy have brought Nidoking, Liepard, Escavalier, Hatterene, Toxapex, and Oranguru. Looks pretty hard Trick Room adjacent. They have the option of clicking Trick Room with Hatterene, which can't be taunted because it gets Magic Bounce, or with Oranguru, which is a little bit easier to shut down, but very powerful, of course, with Instruct next to a partner if it gets the chance. Or they can use the Max Guard play, where they Dynamax either Hatterene or Oranguru. They click Trick Room, which turns into Max Guard, and then they click Copycat with Liepard, which gives them priority Trick Room. They have that option as well. Hatterene is itself a very strong Trick Room attacker. Escavalier is as well on the physical side. Nidoking is a bit faster, but definitely brings a lot of offense to this matchup, especially into the electric types, and Heatran on the other side. Oranguru with Instruct is a very dangerous support. I'm not really sure what Toxapex does, but it is actually very strong into Rapid Strike Urshifu. It's not a bad check into that Pokemon at all, but we'll see what kind of set they have. On the Oguris side, we have Turbo Fast mode with Raichu and Pincurchin. Raichu, of course, able to use Surge Surfer to double its speed in the electric terrain set by Pincurchin's Electric Surge. I guess alternatively, Pincurchin could have Lightning Rod to protect the 3 water types, but given that we see the Raichu, I think Electric Surge is more likely. We'll find out. Raichu and Pincurchin can click Rising Voltage in this generation. Raichu also has that strong Psychic coverage into Nidoking and Toxapex, which could be very valuable actually for clearing Toxapex to create openings for Urshifu. It also can do like Fake Out support, speed control stuff, although into Trick Room, that's probably not that valuable. Jellicent is interesting because it's very specially bulky and it matches up well type-wise into Escavalier, so it could wall some of these Pokemon and maybe reverse Trick Room. I can't remember whether Jellicent gets imprisoned. It might be able to shut Trick Room down that way as well. Pelipper can set up Rain so that Jellicent can hit harder with water-type attacks, but more importantly so that Urshifu can. If the Oguris can deny Trick Room or reverse it, then Rapid Strike Urshifu should actually be able to outspeed and go crazy into a lot of this team. Because there's just not much in the way of Surging Strikes resistances. Toxapex is the only one. Toxapex is actually a serious problem for the Urshifu. But Urshifu kind of blows through the rest of the team as long as it gets the speed control right. And Raichu can help deal with the Toxapex. And then Heatran, I don't know what Heatran is for, maybe to cover something that the Elegancy didn't bring, but it's early in the season, I haven't figured these things out yet. In any case, let's jump into Game 1 and see what happens. So, we see James P. Sullivan leading next to Hatterene, with Urshifu and Raichu on the other side, going fast immediately on the Oguris side. Hatterene Dynamaxes immediately. That means it will not be setting Trick Room this turn. And it is Dynamaxed, not Gigantamaxed. So it doesn't get G-Max Smite. Nidoking, however, outspeeds Raichu, throws off an Earth Power immediately and KOs. This might be Choice Scarf Nidoking. I think it probably is if it's outspeeding that Raichu, right? Which is a nice surprise, considering that the rest of this looks like a hard Trick Room team. I didn't see that and guess that it was Scarf Nidoking. So they grab a KO quickly there. Of course, they do give that information away for the rest of the set. We see Surging Strikes into Hatterene. Still does pretty good damage despite the doubled HP. Does less than half, in fact. But we see Max Starfall wipe out the Urshifu, and that is 2 quick KOs for the Elegancy. Just going for it immediately. Heatran is here on the Oguris side. It's obviously a threat into Hatterene, but it's going to be outsped by Nidoking, and we know that... Well, we're pretty sure that Nidoking is choice locked into Earth Power, so... Heatran is in some danger, and then Pelipper, of course, can hard counter Nidoking. The problem again for them is Nidoking will go first, but Heatran uses Protect to avoid the Earth Power. So Pelipper does have a chance to snipe the Nidoking now, or to set up Tailwind first, so that now other Pokemon might be faster than Nidoking. It's Sash Pelipper. It survives the Max Starfall thanks to the Sash, and now Heatran Dynamaxes. We see Weather Ball into Nidoking at KOs. Heatran goes for Max Steel Spike, KOs Hatterene. And now it's gone from 4v2 to 2v2, and it's actually the Oguris that have the speed advantage thanks to that Tailwind. The Nidoking was a nice surprise, but not quite enough to sweep the game by itself, and now we see Escavalier and Toxapex with no prospect of setting up Trick Room. These Pokemon don't get it. Hatterene is gone. Hatterene Dynamax turn 1. Turned down any chance to set Trick Room, probably because it was next to the Scarf Nidoking, so the positioning was a little bit awkward there for the Elegancy in that way. Max Flare immediately wipes out the Escavalier and changes the weather. The weather doesn't really matter at this point. You're the Oguris, you're fine with that. Pelipper does miss a Hurricane, however, because of the sun. We see that it's Air Balloon Toxapex. I'm not sure that the Ontario coach noticed that, given that Heatran just went from Max Quake into an immunity there. Oh, no, of course, they planned to break the balloon with the Hurricane. They just missed. Sorry, didn't mean to underestimate you there. They were trying to break the balloon with Hurricane, but they missed, so the Max Quake also does no damage. But now Toxapex knocks out Pelipper, and it's just a question... Well, it's not a question of whether Heatran can damage Toxapex. We know it has a fire move, because he used Max Flare. We also know it has Flash Cannon. There goes the balloon. Toxapex is not going to do enough damage back. It removes a Citrus Berry from Heatran. So it's not a Shoka Berry. We know that Heatran won't take an Earth Power if Nidoking gets the opportunity to click it later. Toxapex trying to get some recovery with Pain Split, but it just doesn't have enough damage. And Heatran also can fish for a crit, but it doesn't need one. The Earth Powers finish the job. And so the Scarf Nidoking was massively threatening into Heatran, but one Protect, and Nidoking just dropped to Water-type damage. And that's the threat posed by the Ontario Oguris here, right? Heatran pretty much shut down the rest of this team once Nidoking was off the board. And... sorry, I got a message there. It distracted me for a second. The Nidoking was a great tech to threaten Raichu and Heatran, but against 3 water types is going to be pretty hard to position. So let's see what adjustments they come up with in Game 2 now. The Jellicent is now male instead of female. I don't think that's going to make any difference to how the games play out, though. We see Urshifu leading with Raichu, so I think it's the same lead as before, right? I think it's the same lead on both sides as before, right? Nidoking and Hatterene is certainly the same. I think it was Urshifu Raichu last time, but this time the Raichu switches out to Pelipper, looking to avoid that unexpectedly fast Earth Power. The Urshifu Dynamax is immediately... neither player brought the G-Max characteristic this set, as it is just Dynamax Urshifu to go with the Dynamax Hatterene. Urshifu tanks a Thunderbolt thanks to Dynamax. I believe that would have KO'd otherwise. And Max Geyser knocks Hatterene down to a Focus Sash, as Hatterene does set Trick Room this time. Tanked a Thunderbolt from Nidoking. Okay, so Hatterene was able to use its action to set Trick Room. So this time the speed control advantage seems to be with the Elegancy, especially since Urshifu can't click Aqua Jet, even if it has it, while it's Dynamaxed. We see a Psychic from Hatterene do 3/4 to Pelipper, but this is the awkward thing about the Nidoking, right? The one problem with setting Trick Room is that the Nidoking is now going to move after the Pelipper, and so it just gets knocked out by Pelipper once again. Urshifu is free to take out Hatterene, and although the Elegancy did a bunch of damage in the first couple turns there, they haven't actually taken any KOs. That said, Escavalier is here to try to take KOs now. Liepard is not really threatening much damage, but we'll see if Escavalier can pull this one back. Fake out into Pelipper does quite a bit, actually. But a Drill Run crit is not enough to knock out the Urshifu. Max Geyser takes out Escavalier, and I don't think Liepard is going to have enough damage to close this one out as the Urshifu's Dynamax wears off and just gets dropped by a Weather Ball. Yeah, I do think there was a bit of an issue there for the Elegancy in that in both of the late games, they had a support Pokemon, or like kind of just a wall in Toxapex's case, that didn't do enough damage back. So they got Escavalier on the field, and this time it was in Trick Room, but then they were relying on Escavalier to do all of the damage that they needed. And of course, Urshifu resists both of its stabs, so that's why they were clicking Drill Run, and Urshifu was Dynamax, they just didn't have enough damage to pull this one back once the Trick Room was up. But also, yeah, the Scarf, I got excited about the Scarf Nidoking Game 1. That was pretty cool to see taking out that Raichu, but it did actually make their positioning pretty awkward because they avoided setting Trick Room Game 1 and got overwhelmed by the Oguris speed control. And then when they did set Trick Room in Game 2, that made their own Nidoking pretty useless, and they didn't have enough damage from there. So it'll take some fine-tuning, I think. I'm sure the Elegancy will bounce back strong in later weeks, but it can be a little bit tricky to figure out how to use a team like this. Meanwhile, the Ontario Oguris take the 2-0 win. Urshifu showing why it was the first overall pick. We'll see what their other opponents over the course of the season can do to stop it. Up next, we have Pendragon United taking on the Edmonton Empoleons. I hope we do see a Gigantamax in this set, because I do see that Kingler on the Empoleons side. They also have the Riolu. So Riolu, I actually have seen their paste. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll pretend that I don't. Riolu could be running Prankster, Sunny Day, or Rain Dance, the former to enable the Moltres and maybe the Darmanitan, which can get fire coverage and even turn into a fire type if it has Zen mode, and the latter to enable the Kingler. Otherwise, they have just like a strong mix of threats here. Togekiss and Crocodile is an interesting duo, because Togekiss can use Helping Hand to boost Crocodile's Earthquake, or Follow Me to redirect threat, while Crocodile throws off those Earthquakes next to Togekiss, which is immune. And they've also brought another Earthquake immunity in Moltres, so they might well be looking to do that, although there aren't a ton of good Earthquake targets on the other side this time. I'm interested to see what the Galarian Darmanitan can do for sure, because it's such a menace. But the Moltres might be the key Pokemon here, as it can relatively well sit on the field in front of Leafeon, Exeggutor, Tapu Lele, to an extent, Ninetales, even Charizard. But I don't know. It might be a little bit, might have a little bit too much work to do here, but it'd be good to see if it can put in some work. Otherwise, Kingler for speed control. G-Max Kingler for speed control might actually be pretty cool here into the fast offense from the other side. From Pendragon United, we see that Sun offense we've been expecting since the early stages of the draft. Ninetales is here to set the Sun. Presumably Gigantamax Charizard is here to go crazy with G-Max Wildfire. They have two different Chlorophyll users, Leafeon on the physical side and Exeggutor on the special side, with Exeggutor also able to play in a Psy Spam mode, thanks to Tapu Lele setting up the Psychic terrain. And I don't know what Pheromosa is here to do. I could see it running some interesting coverage to threaten some of the Pokemon on the other side. I could also just see it clicking Speed Swap into Charizard or something like that to make their offense go turbo fast. Although, again, it'll be interesting to see if Kingler is able to create some issues for that. Let's jump in and see. We're back. I don't know what's going on in the chat here. We're back, people. Same leads. Oh, I think they got disconnected. Showdown has had a few connection issues lately, hasn't it? Anyway, we see Tapu Lele and Exeggutor right off the bat against Kingler and Moltres, so there is no Sun on the field. The Exeggutor is probably not turbo fast. It could be running a Choice Scarf or something, or they could just swap Lele out to Ninetales here. But actually, that is massively threatening, because there's nothing on the other side that wants to take an Expanding Force. Crocodile is the only Psychic Resist or immunity that they have. So I think Pendragon United have probably correctly identified Exeggutor as a giant threat right off the bat, and we'll see what the Empoleons have to deal with it. Could just be like a Dynamax Moltres or something, although again, I'm worried the Moltres is very strong into a lot of the other team. I'm worried that it will be sort of tasked with doing too much work for it to handle, but let's see. Exeggutor just protects this turn. There's no immediate switch to Ninetales. Tapu Lele throws off a Psychic into Moltres, does a lot of damage already. Moltres hits back with a Heat Wave, but not into Exeggutor, only into Tapu Lele. And Moltres, that base 125 special attack stat doesn't go as far these days as you might think. Yeah, it only does a bit of damage to Tapu Lele. They were really hoping to hit the Exeggutor. Of course, if Exeggutor had gone for fast Expanding Force, well, I don't know. Moltres tanked the Psychic from Tapu Lele. So Pendragon United have played this one pretty well overall. Anyway, enough avoiding the elephant in the room. The Kingler clicked Guillotine into Tapu Lele. They went for Guillotine, turn 1, week 1. Absolute menace. Unfortunately, they missed. Tapu Lele will take out Moltres with a Psychic here. Kingler goes for Ice Beam into Exeggutor, and it does 50%. We have seen Ice Beam and Guillotine so far from this Kingler. This Kingler is unbelievable. Does it get the freeze? No. Exeggutor throws off a Leaf Storm, knocks out Kingler. But it took a lot of damage in the process. We also see it as a Life Orb, so it takes a little bit more damage, and of course lowers its own damage potential. Darmanitan and Togekiss are the Pokemon in the back, and Tapu Lele just goes straight for that Psychic once again before Darmanitan takes out both Pokemon with a Rock Slide. Darmanitan is only at 12%. Togekiss went for Air Slash, so it could be playing a Flinch Hacks game. That would complement the Guillotine Kingler, I guess. Except the Sun finally does hit the field here. We see that they actually left the Charizard behind this time. Ninetales will set up the Sun for Chlorophyll, Leafeon, and Togekiss I think will not be fast enough. I mean, we'll see what damage Leafeon can threaten, but Leafeon Dynamaxes, they haven't used that yet. Goes for Max Strike into Donkey Kong. Gets the speed lowering effect on Togekiss. Ninetales throws off a big Overheat, big damage. Togekiss goes for Life Dew, but is at this point only able to heal itself. It is decent healing with the leftovers, and we see the Dynamax Togekiss Can Togekiss pull it back? Maybe. Leafeon goes for Max Strike. I don't know what the underlying move is. It could be like Giga Impact or something, I guess. Get some more damage and a speed drop into Togekiss. But Ninetales Overheat is getting weaker quickly as it lowers its own special attack. Togekiss goes for a Max Airstream into Leafeon. Of course, that the boost is offset by the Max Strike drops. And we see that Leafeon has the Koba Berry, taking less than half from that flying type attack this turn. This is Leafeon's last turn of Dynamax. It goes for one more Max Strike. It almost KOs. I think Ninetales can take it from here. Ninetales goes for Hypnosis and misses. Guess that makes up for the Guillotine miss earlier. We see a Max Airstream knock out the Leafeon, and now Togekiss, I think, has one turn left to Dynamax. Of course, Ninetales has no damage on it, and also it's faster, and minus a million Overheat is enough to take out the Togekiss. That Togekiss was a threat in the late game, but Leafeon and Ninetales, with their speed control, were able to overwhelm it. That was a fun game for sure. I hope we see more from that Kingler in the rest of the set. Let's just go straight to game 2. Guillotine and Ice Beam. What else have you got? Surely a water attack, right? Kingler's here with Riolu against Tapu Lele and Exeggutor once again. Pendragon United sticking with what they know is a massively threatening lead here. I wonder whether we'll see the Crocodile in this game. I also wonder whether Moltres is being saved in the back so it doesn't take a ton of damage early this time. But mostly I wonder what the Kingler is going to do. This time Ninetales does switch in turn 1. So we see the mix-up there from Pendragon United. Moltres switches in for Kingler, but Exeggutor Dynamaxes. And just goes straight for Max Overgrowth into the Kingler slot, so that doesn't do a whole lot of damage to Moltres. They do change the terrain to grassy, so there's no expanding force threat anyway with Exeggutor Dynamaxed, but actually, Riolu goes for Circle Throw and forces Ninetales right back out to Tapu Lele. If you're Pendragon United, I think you're fine with how that one turned out. Exeggutor is still going to be a menace now. Moonblast actually does not KO the Riolu. Riolu tanking that pretty nicely with I assume an Eviolite. I don't remember that from their paste. But Exeggutor's Max Mindstorm knocks out Moltres. I really thought we would see the Moltres Dynamax at least once in this set. I guess there could still be a game 3, but we don't see it this game. Circle Throw brings Ninetales back out this time, but even Ninetales is putting out enough offensive pressure, especially into this Darmanitan, that I'm not really sure there's any relief to be found for the Empoleons. We see coaching into the Darmanitan, so the Darmanitan is going to hit absurdly hard if it gets the chance to land any attacks at all. Ninetales Overheat takes out Riolu. What does Exeggutor go for? Oh, it's Eject Pack Ninetales, so that pivots out now for Pheromosa, which we see is their last Pokemon here. No Leafeon this time. Of course, Pheromosa is massively fast. Still a threat to Togekiss. Darmanitan does get to throw off a Rock Slide. I'm guessing that's Scarf Darmanitan if it went before what I've been assuming is Chlorophyll Exeggutor. I mean, it's not going to be Harvest Exeggutor with a Life Orb. That Rock Slide knocks Pheromosa down to its Focus Sash, but then Darmanitan drops to a Max Mindstorm. I mean, we should see the G-Max Kingler. It's their last Pokemon. Here it is. It takes a bunch from close combat. It takes a bunch from Leaf Storm. It's knocked out before it gets to do anything. Alright, well, fingers crossed for G-Max Kingler to put in some work in future sets. It is a 2-0 win for Pendragon United, but that Kingler showed 2 moves, and they were Guillotine and Ice Beam, and that's what I'm going to be remembering after this set. But the United Sun offense and Psy-Spam still looks massively strong as well. Definitely a scary team that I think I do play at some point this season. By the way, I forgot to say my usual spiel earlier. Usually I know the outcome of a set before I watch it, but I am watching the replays for the first time. So the details of what happened are new to me, but I did know who won this one, and I did kind of let slip earlier that there was not going to be a game 3. I'll try not to do that kind of thing. Anyway, up next we have Ryangreenblue taking on Lunala Plaza. Look at that Zarude rocking back and forth there. Look at that Blacephalon hidden behind the Zarude. Blacephalon is one of my favorite Ultra Beasts for sure. I hope we see it put in some crazy work this season. Ryangreenblue but drafted a hard Trick Room team, and they brought a hard Trick Room team to this set. Mimikyu, one of the best Trick Room setters in the game. A bunch of strong attackers in Magearna, Stack Attacka, Golurk, and Conkeldurr. Another Trick Room setter in Bronzong. A couple other Pokemon here can also set Trick Room as well as attacking. And yeah, they have a lot of physical offense to throw at Lunala Plaza. I'm not sure whether that's an intentional choice based on the roster. I mean, Rhydon is pretty physically bulky. I don't know what else they have for dealing with physical threats because I don't remember the rest of their roster. I do remember that Lunala Plaza is able to go bulky with G-Max Lapras, setting up Aurora Veil with whatever his G-Max move is called. So it might not be an easy Trick Room sweep for Ryangreenblue here, but they have a lot of threatening Pokemon. Of course, it's largely just Magearna on the special side, but Magearna being able to set up with Soul Heart, getting a boost whenever any other Pokemon on the field faints, no matter what side it's on or what caused it to faint. Is really going to be something. It'll be actually kind of interesting to see how the Magearna matches up into the Blacephalon, because Blacephalon is a Pokemon that tends to go out with a bang, if you will, especially if it's clicking Mind Blown to do big spread damage at the cost of some of its own HP. It's a Pokemon that gets a lot of KOs, but also can be KO'd very easily. So in theory, it can play into Magearna's hands, except that Blacephalon, as a powerful offensive fire type, is also itself a massive threat to Magearna. Probably depends to some extent on whether Trick Room is up. I could see the female Indeedee on the Lunala Plaza side being meant to try to deny Trick Room. I also could definitely see a bulky game plan centered on the Lapras, the Rhydon, the Zarude with Jungle Healing, the Indeedee redirection, maybe something like Heal Pulse. So there, yeah, I see ways they can disrupt Trick Room, and I see ways they can try to weather the offense in the Trick Room, but it's going to be tough for sure. Let's see what happens. Blacephalon leading with Zarude. Okay, not really what I anticipated. We'll see what happens here against Mimikyu and Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr goes straight for a wide guard, trying to shut down a Mind Blown, I guess, if one is coming. Zarude clicks Taunt into Mimikyu. No Mental Herb. Alright, I did not think that was going to work, but yeah, if Mimikyu went for Trick Room this turn, it looks like that will be denied. And Blacephalon not falling for the bait. No Mind Blown here, just immediately uses Flamethrower to knock out Conkeldurr and gets a special attack beast boost. Mimikyu did go for Trick Room, and with no Mental Herb, yeah, that lead worked out very nicely for Lunala Plaza. I was a little bit surprised to see it. Maybe Ryangreenblue did as well, but they got exactly what they wanted from that turn 1. Magearna is now on the field outside of Trick Room, facing +1 Blacephalon. Zarude Darkest Lariat will break the disguise, and Blacephalon, Flamethrower takes out Magearna. Mimikyu didn't go for a Shadow Sneak there either, so I don't know what Mimikyu has other than the Trick... Oh, okay, it has Fling, sure. Fling, Iron Ball. Alright, no Mental Herb because Mimikyu wants to go slow and do damage itself in Trick Room. But Blacephalon took 2 KOs before dropping there. That's probably worth it for Lunala Plaza. That Fling tech is a lot of fun, though. I believe Fling... I don't remember super well how Fling works, but I believe its damage is tied to the specific item that you throw. The idea being that heavier items do more damage, and Iron Ball is the one that does the most, while also slowing Mimikyu down so it can take advantage of the Trick Room that it sets. Cool tech for sure. We see Machamp is the next Pokemon up for Lunala Plaza. Stakataka is the last one for Ryangreenblue. Stakataka Dynamaxes immediately. That means they still won't be able to set Trick Room up while the Mimikyu is taunted, but I guess you have to do that in front of Machamp, because otherwise it's just going to knock out Stakataka before you can set the Trick Room anyway. See Darkest Lariat do a bunch of damage to Mimikyu. Shadow Claw back into Machamp, implying Mimikyu is not running Play Rough. Doesn't do a ton of damage to Machamp. Stakataka survives a close combat at 25% thanks to the Dynamax, and uses Max Knuckle to knock out Machamp, boosting its own attack and that of Mimikyu. So the Dynamax, I guess, get a defense boost from the Beast Boost there. The Dynamax really paying off for Ryangreenblue. They are still in this one for now. Taunt wears off, but Zarude is still on the field. Lapras is here. Lapras Gigantamaxes. Mimikyu's taunted again. G-Max Resonance, that's what it's called. Almost, but not quite KOs Stakataka. Stakataka goes from Max Rockfall into Lapras. Doesn't KO through the Aurora Veil. Oh, and it's Life Orb Stakataka. I missed that earlier, so it can only attack one more time, except not really, because they never got Trick Room up, so Stakataka will be knocked out before it can attack anyway. So it's all up to Mimikyu here, and I think it's probably too late, especially with the Jungle healing Lapras. And yeah, no Play Rough, so they'll have to click Shadow Claw into Zarude. I don't think Mimikyu can ever beat Zarude from here. Lapras takes out Stakataka with a Max Geyser. Mimikyu drops to Darkest Lariat. And this is, I think, a different game if Ryangreenblue manages to get Trick Room up. But the Taunt Zarude really well shut that down this game. So I think we just jump to Game 2 and see what adjustments they can come up with. Yeah, let's do it. Indeedee this time with Zarude. Oh, hold on. I feel like I'm usually doing well at remembering this season, but I did forget this time when I said that Indeedee could disrupt Trick Room. This is Sword and Shield. Female Indeedee does not learn Trick Room, so they can't reverse Trick Room with Indeedee, and they can't use Imprison Trick Room, because they can't have that move to Imprison. Only male Indeedee gets Trick Room in Sword and Shield. That also is almost certainly what they intended in Scarlet and Violet, but then they gave Trick Room to female Indeedee in raids by accident. And then they decided it was just going to have to be a thing because players had legitimately obtained that due to their oversight. Indeedee cannot disrupt Trick Room in the way that I was suggesting, is my point here. I made a mistake when I was going over team preview at first. However, the Taunt Zarude is still here, and Indeedee setting up Psychic Terrain means that Conkeldurr can't just Mach Punch the Zarude out of here, which might be what Lunala Plaza is adjusting for here. Conkeldurr Dynamaxes though, turn 1. Indeedee goes for Follow Me. Zarude taunts the Mimikyu. We know that works, but Mimikyu goes straight for Fling. Almost takes out the Indeedee with that Iron Ball, but not quite. But then Conkeldurr max Rockfall. I guess you could have clicked that into Zarude, huh? Because the Fling did so much that the sand damage would have finished Indeedee off. Unless it has safety goggles, but I'm not sure it would in this matchup. In any case, they double up into Indeedee. They get rid of that. Zarude is definitely massively threatened by this Conkeldurr. We see it's Flame Orb Conkeldurr, so it's running Guts as its ability. It's going to do a ton of damage, assuming it's not one-shot by the Blacephalon anymore. As Blacephalon is back, Magearna switches in front of Blacephalon, pretty bold. The Zarude goes for Brick Break, just getting a bit of chip, I guess, and then Blacephalon throws off the Mind Blown. Since Conkeldurr is Dynamaxed, it cannot Wide Guard this time. Magearna faints, Zarude faints to its own teammate's attack. Blacephalon takes 50%, 2 KOs, 2 Beast Boosts, plus 2 Special Attack. Will it get to use that boost? No, it'll drop to a max Rockfall. But it did a lot of damage on the way out. However, because of that play, Lunala Plaza are now down to their last Pokemon. It is Lapras. Against Mimikyu and Conkeldurr, Lapras Gigantamaxes. G-Max Resonance finishes off Conkeldurr and sets up the Aurora Veil. Does Ryangreenblue have enough damage to break through? They do finally set up the Trick Room. They get Stack Attack in Trick Room. Stone Edge connects. It does 38%. Not amazing damage. But G-Max Resonance is not doing a lot back. I don't know why they didn't go for Max Geyser there. Maybe a misclick. The damage into Lapras is, I was going to say slowly adding up, but Stone Edge is a move that has a high crit rate. Of course, it also has not amazing accuracy. It could have missed, but it does have that boosted crit rate, and that is the risk of a bulky game plan. It does crit the Lapras through the Aurora Veil and knock it out. It is actually a really sort of interesting wrinkle in the Lunala Plaza roster here, that on the one hand, you can see the obvious bulk mode with Lapras, Zarude, and Indeedee, but also they have Blacephalon throwing off massive damage and sometimes to the entire field, right? So that game, they had the bulky setup with Lapras at the end, but that was after Blacephalon took out a teammate and half of its own HP and knocked them down to the last Pokemon fairly quickly. It's sort of an anti-synergy that I think they'll have to manage carefully over the course of the season, but it also, of course, makes the team more dynamic and able to play in different ways. It's just kind of unfortunate for them in this game that Blacephalon, you know, crashed and burned quickly, and then Lapras was left to try to tank through the endgame by itself, and one Stone Edge crit kind of sealed it. You know, sometimes I think the Blacephalon blowing up will be favorable to Lunala Plaza this season. Sometimes it might kind of burn them. We'll see how they manage it over the rest of the season, but first we'll see how they manage it over the rest of this set, because we are going to Game 3 here. A lot has depended on whether Ryangreenblue can get the Trick Room up, but also, of course, that Stone Edge crit was... even without the crit, I don't think Lapras... Well, actually, if they just click Max Geyser, we know they have it. They could have beaten Stack Attacka. Well, a lot has come down to whether they get Trick Room up, which I think it will for them often in this season. We see Zarude and Blacephalon leading against Mimikyu and Conkeldurr. I believe these are the same leads as Game 1. This time, Blacephalon Dynamaxes turn 1. No Mind Blown here. Conkeldurr also Dynamaxes. We saw Blacephalon one-shot Conkeldurr with Flamethrower turn 1 of Game 1. Let's see what happens here in Game 3. Mimikyu is taunted turn 1 for a third time in a row. Blacephalon clicks Max Flare. Ooh, does not do a whole lot of damage to Conkeldurr. That's a pretty big departure from the Flamethrower one-shot Game 1, huh? Mimikyu gets to click Fling into Blacephalon. It almost KOs into Dynamax, and Conkeldurr gets to follow up with the Max Rockfall. This time they do target the Zarude, which I think is valuable. It nets them more damage. Does it mean Blacephalon gets through this turn? Yes, because the Sandstorm only does 3% while it's Dynamax, but Blacephalon can only survive one more turn of Sand. And if it switches out, they give up their Dynamax for the rest of the game. Oh, they do have Jungle Healing, that's right. So Blacephalon will get another chance here, but a second Max Flare still doesn't knock out the Conkeldurr. Mimikyu is able to finish Blacephalon off. Conkeldurr knocks out Zarude with the super effective Max Knuckle. The Taunt threat is off the board now. The last two Pokemon, Conkeldurr faints, but I think that's a fine trade for Ryangreenblue. Rhydon and Indeedee are the ones left. I guess they knew they were Dynamaxing Blacephalon, so they didn't bring the G-Max Lapras this time. It makes sense, but we'll see what these Pokemon can do. Indeedee clicking Guard Swap into Stack Attack is actually super cool, though. Wait, what does Guard Swap do? Wait, hang on. It swaps changes. I was thinking of Guard Split. Guard Split would be amazing into Stack Attack. That averages the defensive stats. In Sword and Shield, people ran teams that used that with Shuckle and Chansey, because Shuckle has crazy high defense and Chansey has high special defense but crazy low special defense, and it would make really annoying teams that were really hard to break with Guard Split, Shuckle, and Chansey. But what did Indeedee do here? Guard Swap swaps the stat changes, and there weren't any on the board yet. If Stack Attack had a Beast Boost, then that would give the boost to Indeedee, but it didn't here, so not really sure what they were cooking with the Guard Swap. Rhydon tanks a Shadow Claw pretty well. Body presses Stack Attack. It crits, but it does not KO. Stack Attack is so massively bulky. Stack Attack does set its own Trick Room this time. Again, Indeedee cannot reverse it, because female Indeedee does not learn Trick Room in this generation. Stack Attack Body Press is a lot to Indeedee. Mimikyu doesn't really have a great follow-up, though, does it? Rhydon knocks out Stack Attack. Mimikyu taunts Indeedee. That's an okay follow-up. Oh, Mental Herb, though. Indeedee will be able to click Follow Me on the next turn. Ryangreenblue still is another Pokemon, though. It's Magearna. And, well, we'll see if the Rhydon can stop that before it... We're so off-book. We'll see if the Rhydon can stop Magearna from running away with this game. Which Pokemon is faster? Magearna has minimum 63 speed, Rhydon minimum 40. So Rhydon is probably slower than Magearna here. And we know that Magearna doesn't have the Iron Ball because that was Mimikyu's item. I guess it could have like a Macho Brace or a Power Lens or something. There are a lot of items at lower speed. So we don't know for sure that Rhydon is slower than Magearna. The taunt will, you know, successfully work into Indeedee this time. Oh, Magearna takes that Body Press really well. I guess Rhydon doesn't have a ground attack. Fleur Cannon does big damage. Almost KOs Rhydon. Mimikyu is able to finish it off. With Soul Heart, half the Fleur Cannon drop is already gone, but Indeedee doesn't have enough damage into Magearna anyway, so yeah. After Magearna had trouble getting past the Blacephalon in the first two games, Ryangreenblue saved it for the end game, while Blacephalon was thrown away early as the Dynamax target this time. Knocked out successfully by Mimikyu and Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr tanking the fire attacks a lot better when it used the Dynamax itself. Plus, of course, you can't really KO Mimikyu immediately thanks to Disguise. So, Blacephalon certainly went out with a bang this time, trying to get that immediate offense by Dynamaxing, but that meant that Ryangreenblue could remove it early and close the game out with Magearna. Pretty solid first win there by Ryangreenblue. Going to be interesting to see how this Hard Trick Room team plays for the rest of the season. I think Hard Trick Room is a very strong approach to this format. I think I maybe should have taken a closer look at it than I did during the draft, when, as I said in my draft recap, I was seriously thinking about taking Mimikyu in the very first round. That's not the route I went. It's cool to see that someone else did. I would say that Mimikyu definitely could have used Play Rough in this set. Shadow Claw and Fling have pretty similar coverage, and once you've used your one-time Fling, you can't use it anymore. The normal type immunity and the dark type resistance to Shadow Claw were genuine issues for this Mimikyu's damage output, but maybe there's something Lunala Plaza has on the bench that I'm not thinking about that motivated that decision. I don't know. Play Rough is just a really good attack, though. Let's move on to the next one. We got the Alaskan Absols taking on the Azure Bay Chatots. The Chatots have brought their Sand mode with Tyranitar and Stoutland. I feel like there's more to their Sand mode than that. Do they have another Sand Rush Pokemon? I'm actually going to take a quick look at the dock for this one. The Chatots have... Oh yeah, Dracovish. That's their other Sand Rush Pokemon. Interesting that Dracovish is not here this week. But they do have Tyranitar, Stoutland. They do have Clefable, which can use Magic Guard to be immune to sand damage. They have another immunity in the Genesect. And I think Komoa with Overcoat is also immune to sand damage, right? So they can chip the opponent's team with that while being largely unaffected by it themselves. They have Tailwind from the Articuno or Trick Room. My guess is Tailwind on this team, but they could be either one. Stoutland will go fast with Sand Rush. They have big setup threat in Komoa, potentially covered by Clefable using Follow Me to enable it to click that Clangorous Soul, or even Dragon Dance or something. They have Genesect, which is just a strong offensive Pokemon that brought the Fairy Dragon Steel Core. Like I said, speed control from the Articuno. And if we get a bunch of Intimidates from the Absols, which is possible, they brought 3 Pokemon that can have Intimidate. Articuno with Competitive kind of feasts on that, and goes to town with its Psychic and Flying Stabs. The only Psychic resist or immunity here is the single Striker Shifu, and that of course is weak to the flying attacks. Of course, Articuno can't run all of Tailwind, Trick Room, Imprison, Freeze and Glare, Hurricane, but whatever combination it has, it's definitely a threat that the Absols have to take seriously here. And then they have the whole other Sand Control dynamic with Stoutland. On the Absols side, they do have the Intimidate spam, which is strong into Tyranitar and Stoutland, not so strong into Genesect and Komodo, and actively detrimental into Articuno. Don't know how many of these actually have Intimidate, they'll get other abilities. But they brought their well-rounded Fire, Water, Grass core. Looks like they're trying to play a balancey game here, maybe do something with the bulky Goodra. And of course, the single Striker Shifu shouldn't be slept on as an offensive threat into Pokemon like Tyranitar, Stoutland, and Articuno. It can do a lot of damage here. The problem is it's threatened by the Clefable, and the Clefable gets Follow Me. But even then, I could see the Urshifu running, you know, Iron Head that turns into Max Steel Spike or something to try to break through the Clefable and create openings for itself to sweep through this team. And I can see Salamon's putting in a lot of work here. Again, you have to be careful about the Intimidate, but probably just a balancy game plan that looks to do damage with the Urshifu here. Or I could see Acid Armor Goodra. Or, yeah, Acid Armor Goodra especially. Maybe a couple of other sets being very strong here. So a lot will depend on what exactly these Pokemon have brought. We see Clefable leading with Articuno. It is the shiny Galarian Articuno. You love to see it. Against Gyarados and Virizion. No Intimidate on the Gyarados. So they do not boost the Articuno immediately. Articuno goes straight for Dynamax, though. And so does Gyarados. And we see Follow Me. Virizion uses Coaching, boosting the Gyarados' damage. That Clefable is about to take a beating, but not before Virizion just drops to a double super effective Max Airstream, which of course also boosts the speed on their side. Gyarados, though, goes for its own +1 Max Airstream, and that's Generation 8 Pokemon right there. That's Sword and Shield. They're just trading the best move in the format back and forth so far. Gyarados showing, of course, we know it has Moxie because it doesn't have Intimidate. It's now at +1 speed, +1 defense, +2 attack, looking like an absolute menace. Urshifu is here, maybe looking to Sucker Punch the Articuno. Clefable isn't here to stop it. Stoutland comes in. No Intimidate confirmed on the Stoutland. I mean, I figured it had Sand Rush, but now we know it definitely doesn't have Intimidate to slow this down. Sucker Punch, or no, it's not Sucker Punch. Scarf Urshifu, I guess, given that this is +1 Articuno. So Wicked Blow gets the guaranteed crit. Doesn't quite KO, but does a lot of damage. Before Urshifu also drops to a Max Airstream. Is Gyarados going for Max Airstream as well? Stoutland goes for Wild Charge first, does about half, so it would have KO'd without the Dynamax, but not quite enough damage into Dynamax Gyarados. Gyarados goes for Max Darkness. It is not participating in the speed control war anymore. Instead, taking out the Articuno, getting another attack boost, taking a bit of Life Orb chip, though. It is now in range of that Wild Charge, but it gets a special defense drop into Stoutland, so we'll see if they have something in the back to take advantage of that. Arcanine is here against Genesect. Arcanine does have Intimidate. It's actually Scrappy Stoutland, not Sand Rush, so it is not affected by the Intimidate. But knowing that it isn't Sand Rush, I think, is valuable if you're the Absols here. Arcanine obviously massively threatening to Genesect. But again, Gyarados is in range of that Wild Charge. I'm not sure what happens here. Arcanine protects. They click the Wild Charge into Arcanine, maybe anticipating that Gyarados will max guard here, and Arcanine will try to create an opening for it on the next turn. We're just trying to preserve the Genesect. Gyarados max Geyser takes out the Genesect and sets up the Rain. Gyarados gets the +3 attack. Dynamax wears off, but Gyarados has put in so much work this game. Arcanine Extreme Speed does quite a bit of damage to the Stoutland, and after a Wild Charge recoil, Stoutland might be in range of the next one. But Arcanine doesn't go for it, and it doesn't have to, as Flare Blitz in the Rain takes out the Stoutland after Arcanine tanks one more Wild Charge. It is physical Arcanine, as you'd expect. It has a Citrus Berry. They get that little bit of information at the end of the game. And, yeah, the Max Darkness into Articuno was an interesting choice, because it looks like the Absols didn't actually bring anything to take advantage of the special defense drop. But I suppose it didn't matter that much to the game. It would have been funny and very nostalgic to see the Dynamax Pokemon just trading Max Airstreams until they couldn't anymore. But who knows, maybe we'll get some more of that in Game 2. Let's go. Clefable leading with Articuno once again against Virizion and Gyarados, so same leads as last time. Articuno Dynamax is turn 1, so does Gyarados. Virizion clicks Coaching. Clefable did not click Coach Follow Me this time. That is the one deviation so far from what we saw in Game 1. Articuno goes for the Max Airstream, takes out Virizion. Gyarados, Max Airstream, goes into Articuno this time, doesn't quite KO, but we're seeing a lot of the same. Maybe they might have targeted Articuno last game as well. The Clefable did click Follow Me then, now that I think about it. They're leaving the Clefable on the field this time, but Gyarados is piling up those boosts. Articuno, of course, still faster, and Clefable actually goes for Icy Wind, so Articuno was already faster than Gyarados, but doubling down on their speed control here. But this is a different position for sure, right? Because Urshifu comes in here. Last game, Urshifu clicked Wicked Blow into Articuno, and it was faster than +1 Articuno. This game, that would KO, but the Clefable is still here and able to redirect, and Clefable doesn't care about taking a Wicked Blow. So the Gyarados not clicking the Max Airstream into Clefable this time is a little bit awkward for the Absols. There's the Follow Me. It does redirect the Wicked Blow. I mean, it does a third to Clefable. It's not terrible, but it would have KO'd Articuno if it had gotten to connect. Instead, Articuno takes out Urshifu with a Max Airstream without taking that damage itself this time. Gyarados Max Airstream KOs Clefable a turn later than in the last game. And the Absol's already down to the last two Pokemon. Arcanine is the last one once again. This time its Intimidate will give Articuno a competitive boost. But maybe Extreme Speed KOs Articuno. Let's see. Articuno goes for Max Guard, I guess anticipating that it does. Max Geyser takes out the Stoutland. What is the last Pokemon for the Chatots? A lot comes down to this. It's Kommo-o. Okay. Gyarados' Dynamax wears off here. Kommo-o coming in just as Gyarados ends Dynamax might be a big deal. Because Gyarados doesn't get a lot of flying type attacks. It's probably running Bounce, which is kind of slow and stopped by Protect. It could be running Hurricane, which uses this weaker attacking stat and takes no advantage at all of these attack boosts. So Kommo-o would have been wiped out by a Max Airstream, but now that Gyarados can't click that anymore, this position looked pretty bad for the Chatots. I'm sure Articuno drops to an Extreme Speed now, but I'm not sure if the Absols are able to beat the Kommo-o now that Gyarados' Dynamax is over. So that could be a really smart positional call there by the Chatots, getting the Kommo-o in just as the Dynamax ended. And a lot of it still goes back to them preserving the Clefable by not clicking Follow Me turn 1 this time, and Gyarados, in fact, targeting the Articuno. Well, let's see what happens. Extreme Speed does take out Articuno. Gyarados goes for Earthquake, takes out his own partner, and almost KOs Kommo-o. I mean, that +3 Earthquake did a lot of damage. Draco Meteor crits Gyarados and KOs. We don't have any information on Kommo-o's item, except that it's not a Life Orb or a White Herb. It could be Specs. I assume it's an offensive Gyarados, but Gyarados is pretty bulky. Does that Draco Meteor KO without a crit? Okay, Gyarados was at 69%. Am I going to run a calc? Am I going to run a calc in the middle of a commentary video? I've never done that before, and it feels kind of gross to me. I don't want to make a habit of this, but special circumstances. Gen 8 doubles, level 50, Gyarados, Kommo-o. I'm going to assume, like, this is all of Gyarados' bulk investment. Kommo-o uses Draco Meteor. It could have max special attack, why not? It could. Okay, and then Gyarados is already in range without specs, but it's a high roll. Throw on choice specs. Okay, so because we know very little about Kommo-o's set, we don't know whether that crit mattered, but depending on the set, it might have. Let's go to game 3. Can the Gyarados complete the sweep? Articuno leading with Clefable once again against Gyarados and Virizion. Same leads both sides all 3 games. How will it turn out this time? Articuno Dynamaxes, Gyarados Dynamaxes. Virizion clicks Coaching. No Follow Me from the Clefable. No Follow Me from the Clefable. What does Gyarados do this time? The Max Airstream from Articuno goes into the Gyarados. Virizion survives turn 1. Gyarados goes for Max Darkness. It's Sash Articuno! Okay, I really think you clicked Max Airstream into Clefable there. It one-shot game 1, and that made it a lot easier for Urshifu to do anything. Max Darkness. So, however, the Absols want to get rid of this Articuno. They saw Max Airstream almost but not quite KO last game. Max Darkness is super effective. It surely KOs, except Focus Sash Articuno. It's going to get a competitive boost from this because of the Max Darkness special defense drop. And Virizion was the fastest Pokemon on the field, but Gyarados didn't click Max Airstream, it clicked Max Darkness, so I think +1 Articuno is going to be faster than Virizion now. In any case, they still have Clefable to redirect an attack from Virizion, so Articuno will definitely get a chance to attack. But that Focus Sash is huge here. And they really never revealed that until Game 3, right? Because in both of the first 2 games, Articuno got hit by something that did a lot of damage, but didn't knock it down to its Sash. The Wicked Blow while it was Dynamaxed, and then the Max Airstream while it was Dynamaxed. Clefable just went for Dazzling Gleam this time. Got some chip. Now it's Follow Me. Articuno is fastest. It really didn't need the +2 to take out the Virizion, but now it's a +2 speed, +2 special attack. Gyarados does take out the Clefable with a Max Airstream here, but its boosts are not quite as impressive as Articuno's this time. We do see they brought the Goodra this time, and here's the Kommo-o. +2 Max Airstream takes out the Gyarados before it gets a chance to use its own +2. Draco Meteor does 71 to Goodra. I'm not going back to the calculator, I already closed that tab. Goodra knocks out Articuno. We see Tyranitar this time for the Chatots. We see Salamence this time for the Absols. Kommo-o moved before Salamence. Maybe it's Scarfed. Although I feel like I'm guessing everything fast is Scarfed this week, but I do think I'm right more often than not. If it's Scarf Kommo-o, then depending on the investment, if it's Scarf Kommo-o, then if it's max special attack, it needed a high roll to KO Gyarados last game without the crit, right? Assuming no bulk Gyarados. If Gyarados has any bulk, then the crit definitely mattered. Assuming. I don't know, I haven't seen their paste. Goodra's gone. Dragon Claw doesn't quite take out Kommo-o. Ice Punch doesn't quite take out Salamence, but Sand Damage does. What a crazy set. The only thing that slightly disappoints me here is that the Genesect didn't do much, but it'll get more chances. But this was an absolute back-and-forth slugfest that really could have gone either way, with 2 Pokemon going crazy with those boosts. I mean, like I said, that's Sword and Shield VGC right there, the way Articuno and Gyarados were just trading Max Airstreams at some points. And I honestly think at some points the Absols just needed to commit harder to that bit. But yeah, the Moxie Gyarados with the coaching boost, the competitive boost into Articuno, that's Gen 8 Pokemon right there. If you don't like that, you don't like Gen 8 Pokemon, and you are the one who's wrong. Anyway, still maybe 3 more sets to go through, judging by the number of tabs I have open, so let's move on. Here we have Team Staff United taking on the new look Dreamyard Darkrais. The Darkrais, no Politoed, so about 3 flying types, maybe more of just a good stuff's approach. I'm not sure what the game plan is here. We get some strong Pokemon here in Zapdos, Tornadus, and Dragonite, but I'm not sure exactly what the synergies are. We'll have to find out as we play. There could be some Trick Room stuff with Cofagrigus. The rest of the team doesn't scream Trick Room to me, but you know, depending on what mode we see from Staff United, it could happen. I don't know what the Azulf does. The Zoroark plays tricks, but what kind, I don't know. Yeah, it's a pretty mysterious one to me. We'll just have to watch the replay and see what their plan is. As for Staff United, we do get the duo of Regigigas and Weezing right away. That is a fun one for sure. There is no ability shield in this game, so all their other Pokemon will also have their abilities turned off, which is actually pretty harmful to Sylveon, considering how important Pixelate is for the big spread Hyper Voice. Also not amazing for Dragapult, which really likes having clear body, or for Nihilego, which could really use those beast boosts, or for Butterfree even if they're running like Compound Eyes on it. But the duo of Weezing and Regigigas might be tricky synergy-wise with the rest of the team, but it is very strong in this game because Regigigas has a lot of stats that it can take advantage of nicely when it Dynamaxes, do big damage, throw off those max strikes for speed control as well as big damage while being very tanky and hard to remove. All with slow start switched off by the neutralizing gas. Nihilego is actually a massive threat to this team because the opponent brought 3 flying types. And Nihilego can throw off big power gems or even a meteor beam once. And stack up some beast boosts. I think it can boost any of special attack, special defense, and speed. So if it's like Meteor Beam, Power Herb, Nihilego, getting the +1 special attack for the Meteor Beam, and then using Beast Boost to boost its speed. That might be really hard to stop in this matchup. I'm not sure what on their team can. Maybe the Cofagrigus. We could see Gigantamax Butterfree. We could see Butterfree as a support Pokemon. We could see it go for Quiver Dance. We could see it use G-Max Befuddle, which is kind of the original Dire Claw. I don't know. There's a lot they could do on both sides. We'll just have to jump in. Zapdos leading with Azelf against Regigigas and Weezing. The Regigigas is going in immediately. It Dynamaxes. Zapdos doesn't. Okay, it just protects. Azelf goes straight for Explosion. That's a fun tech. It is not quite enough to KO the Weezing. It would have been pretty exciting if it did. That's why the Zapdos protected this turn. It also gets them through a turn of the opponent's Dynamax without using their own yet. So if they do Dynamax Zapdos or somebody else like Tornadus or Dragonite next turn, it'll be offset from Regigigas' Dynamax. That Explosion was so cool. I feel like Azelf could have just clicked Psychic into Weezing and knocked it out, but maybe you expect Weezing to protect there. I don't know. I'm not mad at that Explosion play at all. Zapdos takes a little bit of damage to the Protect. It does get its speed lowered. It avoids a taunt with the Protect. And now Tornadus is here. Zapdos does Dynamax. Weezing protects here, but I'm sure Zapdos can still knock it out, right? Tornadus hits Tailwind. So Darkrai is going for the speed control here. The Max Airstream does not go into Weezing. Instead, it goes into Regigigas. They'll get their +1 speed here. Zapdos gets to back to 0, and it'll go back to -1 with a Max Strike, but the Tailwind will still make it fast. Yeah, I feel like the Weezing was vulnerable here. I guess I don't know whether it KOs or not. When you take out Weezing, the Regigigas is a lot weaker, but in any case, Max Strike does a lot back to Zapdos, though. But Zapdos will still be fast thanks to the Tailwind, and Tornadus can do some damage here. It actually goes for Icy Wind, doesn't quite KO Weezing. Does slow Regigigas down some more, and a Max Lightning takes out Regigigas and sets up Electric Terrain. I'm not sure the Electric Terrain is really valuable because these two flying types don't get any benefit from it, but maybe whatever's in the back will somehow. I mean, maybe whatever's in the back will at least avoid a Sleep Powder from the last Pokemon Butterfree, who knows. Dragapult is here. Immediately takes a Dark Pulse from Tornadus, but it has a weakness policy, so if I'm the Dreamyard Darkrais, I'm worried about this Dragapult Dynamaxing in a later game, because weakness policy is really good in Generation 8 on Dynamax attackers. I guess it's also pretty good when you take a super effective coverage move that's not quite strong enough to KO. Zapdos takes out the Weezing. Thanks to the Tailwind, these Pokemon still get to move before the Dragapult, but Dragapult now throws off just a Phantom Force. Okay, so no damage this turn, but Zapdos' Dynamax wears off. I don't know what slot they're targeting with the Phantom Force. I don't have a guess for that. Sylveon is here. It's the last turn of Tailwind. Actually, maybe they're targeting the Tornadus, because if they can take that out here and deny another Tailwind, that's a very strong position for them with the Dragapult being boosted and faster than anything. So that's my guess. They're targeting the Tornadus slot. Dark Pulse goes into Sylveon because it just can't do anything to Dragapult right now. It doesn't do a whole lot to Sylveon either. Thunderbolt doesn't do much to Sylveon. And yeah, sure enough, Phantom Force takes out the Tornadus on the last turn of Tailwind. Zapdos drops to a Hyper Voice. Yeah, they couldn't damage Dragapult because it was disappeared into another dimension. And those two Pokemon were just not threatening much damage into Sylveon. So pretty cozy endgame here for Staff United. Even if Dragonite is running Extreme Speed, Dragapult is immune. Also, of course, Dragonite can't turn itself into a normal type in this generation, so its Extreme Speed is not quite as strong. And Dragapult, fastest Pokemon once the Tailwind is over, only needs one Dragon Dart to take out that Dragonite. Let's go to Game 2, though, and let's see how both teams adjust. I could definitely see Staff United throwing a different look out there this time. Maybe a Dynamax Dragapult, maybe something with the Butterfree. But we'll see what the Darkrais have for it regardless. Zapdos leads with Cofagrigus this time against Dragapult and Sylveon. Is it Quick Attack Sylveon? Okay, first of all, I could see the Darkrais this time giving up on the speed control back and forth with the Tailwind and the Max Strike and the Max Airstream, and just embracing that Zapdos is slower than Dragapult and going for Trick Room here. Sylveon makes that tough because Sylveon will be slower than Zapdos, presumably. But the thing I'm really excited to see if they've brought it is Sylveon has Pixelate as its ability, we know, and that turns its normal type attacks into fairy type attacks, and Sylveon is not a physical attacker. It's not very strong with physical attacks. So we saw the weakness policy Dragapult. They can Dynamax Dragapult here. There's no Tailwind threatened right now because Tornadus isn't on the field. And they can quick attack into their own Dragapult. It is a fairy type quick attack. It's not very strong. It won't do much damage. It'll activate the weakness policy. And then a Max Phantasm into Cofagrigus might resolve the question for us of whether Trico wants to go for Trick Room or not. This also could be Zoroark instead of Cofagrigus or Zapdos, but let's see. Dragapult Dynamaxes. Sylveon goes for the quick attack. Dragapult's going to do big damage back. Zapdos is actually Zoroark. Okay. I questioned whether Zoroark was in the Cofagrigus slot. It was in the Zapdos slot. That Dark Pulse crits Dragapult. Does a ton of damage. Still doesn't quite KO. Dragapult one-shots Cofagrigus, even through the Kasibberry, which I guess is the name of the one that weakens Ghost-type damage. I didn't remember that. Yeah, not enough to stand up to this +2 Dynamax Dragapult. They also get the defense drop into Zapdos. Tornadus is here. Into Zoroark. Zoroark pivots out to the real Zapdos. Tornadus Dynamaxes. Dragapult Max Guards. Avoids Max Hailstorm. Hyper Voice does some good damage back. Max Airstream from Dragapult is an interesting choice. I think that's using Fly as the base. It does not KO Zapdos, but it will give Sylveon a speed boost. And there's no Tailwind this time since Tornadus Dynamaxed immediately. Dragapult gets a Max Darkness into... Okay, Dragapult gets a Max Darkness into... Tornadus gets a Max Darkness into Dragapult. It does lower Sylveon's special attack, but Sylveon still takes this Thunderbolt like it's barely anything. I think this is Assault Vest Sylveon. I think I remember that being talked about actually in the Discord. Gets paralyzed, but still lands the Hyper Voice to take out Zapdos. We can, I think, expect not to see Regigigas in this game, because Regigigas really wants to Dynamax, and Dragapult is Dynamaxed already, so if they're running that game plan, they probably didn't bring Regigigas, so it makes sense that we see Nihilego now. I don't know what the last Pokemon will be. Maybe Butterfree, just for support. But this is a funny image. Big Tornadus and small Tornadus. Of course, the small one is actually Zoroark. But still, with no Tailwind and Tornadus not clicking Max Airstream, instead basically just offsetting what I think is an Assault Vest on the Sylveon for not a ton of gains so far, but we'll see if anything comes of it. Nihilego should be the fastest... Hang on. Tornadus might be faster than Nihilego, actually. Well, let's see. Zoroark is fastest. Goes for Sludge Bomb into Sylveon. Does a lot of damage, but not quite KOing through that, I think, Assault Vest. Max Hailstorm off of Icy Wind doesn't do very much to the specially bulky Nihilego, and it is a Meteor Beam Nihilego. Takes out that Dynamax Tornadus. It's not speed boosting, it actually doubles down on special attacks. So this +2 special attack Nihilego, but we won't get to see it click another attack because Sylveon takes out the Zoroark with a Hyper Voice. And a really solid, well-balanced attack with some fun synergies from Staff United is enough to bring this one home. 2-0 win. Some interesting text for sure from the Darkrais. The Explosion Absol was a lot of fun to see, but it'll be interesting to see how they try to get comfortable with this team that they sort of unexpectedly ended up with over the course of the rest of the season. I could see more aggressive rain modes, but of course you can't just go all in on that for the whole season. But they have some strong Pokemon. We'll see what they can do with them. The Quick Attack Sylveon into Dragapult was a lot of fun to see for sure. What Pokemon am I putting in the thumbnail this week? I have no idea. There's so many contenders. And there's still, I think, 2 sets left to go through. Just quickly check a message I got in the middle of that. Okay, nothing urgent. Alright, East Coast Espurr versus Grounded Punching Bags. The Punching Bags bringing that Delmise that they just picked up in a trade. Bringing their own Sand Rush attacker in Dracozolt with the Hippowdon to set up the sand. Bringing Gardevoir as a strong special attacker that can complement the Dracozolt. Maybe it's running Telepathy to avoid partner Hippowdon Earthquake. Maybe it's in a Trick Room mode with Delmise. Maybe Kangaskhan is here to... I don't know what Kangaskhan does. Maybe we'll find out what Kangaskhan does. And I really don't know what the Wobbuffet does. That one's going to be interesting to see if it actually comes to a game. On the Espurr side, most notably, they did not bring their first round pick, the Colossal. That had a number of us, including me, worried in the draft, is not here week 1. Gonna make its season debut another time. Instead, they have the Firewater Grass Core of Rillaboom, Primarina, and Marowak. I don't know if they're setting Trick Room. I don't know if these Pokemon get Trick Room. Maybe Aromatisse does. I'm not actually sure. I don't know if they're using the Swamp Pledge combo with Grass Pledge and Water Pledge from Rillaboom and Primarina to make the opponent's Pokemon slower than Marowak. That honestly is something they could plausibly do. I think Iron Defense Ferrothorn could put in a lot of work against Dracozolt and Delmise. in Hippowdon. This is a punching bags lineup that leans pretty heavily into physical offense, with Kangaskhan as well. I could see Klefki setting screens. I could see Klefki running Rain Dance to turn off the Sandstorm, actually, and that could give them a speed advantage along with the Pledge combo. Although there's a lot to commit to that particular speed control game plan. But definitely at least 2 or 3 different ways that the Espurr can play this, and at least a couple of ways on the punching bag side. So let's jump in and let's see what they actually are going with here. We see Dracozolt leading with Kangaskhan against Klefki and Rillaboom. Okay. Rillaboom Gigantamaxes immediately. I guess if you don't have the Gigantamax Colossal, you can go ahead and bring Gigantamax Rillaboom. That means it's going to do crazy damage with G-Max Drum Solo or whatever it's called. The Dracozolt does resist, and I can see the Dracozolt Dynamaxing immediately. Never mind, it doesn't. But Rillaboom does avoid a fake out from Kangaskhan here. Klefki sets Reflect. It's Special Dracozolt? Or Mixed? You see Dracozolt, you think Bolt Beak, but this one goes for Flamethrower. It actually does quite a bit to Rillaboom. But Max Quake will knock it out, boost Rillaboom's special defense. So Rillaboom gets boost to both defenses this turn. With the Reflect and the Max Quake, it takes out one of the opponent's most obvious offensive threats in Dracozolt. It can get some recovery from grassy terrain, although that's nerfed a bit by the Dynamax HP boost. But overall, Rillaboom is pretty well positioned here early in Game 1, even though it did take a bunch of damage. We see Dhelmise come in now. Klefki goes for Thunder Wave into Dhelmise immediately. Kangaskhan throws a Fire Punch at Rillaboom. Rillaboom is taking some damage, but the Drum Solo takes out Kangaskhan. Rillaboom takes an Anchor Shot. It can't be switched out, although I don't think it wants to anyway, especially with Hippowdon being the last Pokemon for the punching bags. Hippowdon protects on the last turn of Rillaboom's Gigantamax. Still takes quite a bit of damage from that Drum Solo as Klefki sets the light screen. Dhelmise is fully paralyzed. I don't know what Dhelmise tried to do there. It might have gone for Trick Room, but it is also slow, so maybe it moved last because it's slow. Fully paralyzed again, probably trying to protect there as Hippowdon drops to a Grassy Glide. This is Gen 8 Grassy Glide. It is stronger than it is in Scarlet and Violet, which is really scary on a Pokemon like Rillaboom. One of the reasons Rillaboom was so very good as soon as it got Grassy Surge. Klefki, I guess, has nothing to do at this point. It's just clicking Reflect. It's already set both its screens, and Dhelmise is already paralyzed. Dhelmise is fully paralyzed for a third time in this game, and look how much damage it's taken from that Grassy Glide. Grassy Glide no longer gets priority in a terrain boost because the terrain is over, but it still does 32% to Dhelmise. Rillaboom just getting what damage it can before it's knocked out. No need to switch here. Dhelmise is in trouble for sure, as Ferrothorn will come in to close this one out. Dhelmise goes for Phantom Force, still moving before Ferrothorn despite being paralyzed. Ferrothorn could be running like an Iron Ball to play in Trick Room. It's a massively slow Pokemon. Oh yeah, it goes for Gyro Ball, so that move is stronger. So Gyro Ball's power depends on the difference in speed between the user and the target, where it benefits from the user being slower. So it could be like Iron Ball Ferrothorn to make its speed as low as it possibly can be. Going after a paralyzed Dhelmise is really something. Oh, it's Quick Claw Dhelmise. Wait, did that ever activate before? Anyway, Ferrothorn takes it out. It didn't have any significant damage into Ferrothorn that we could see. I think that was the only time that the Quick Claw activated, right? Wait, there was that one turn it went first. Or tried to and it was fully paralyzed. No, I must just click Protect there. Well, now we know it has a Quick Claw. And we know that Rillaboom and Ferrothorn is kind of hard for the punching bags to break, even though they do have a bunch of fire coverage. Would make sense when you're playing against Ferrothorn with the Flamethrower Dracozolt and the Fire Punch Kangaskhan. It could actually just be mixed Dracozolt, right? Like, it could be running Bolt Beak, Physical Dragon Attack, and just Flamethrower to hit the Ferrothorn. Maybe we'll find out some more about that, though, in Game 2. Did the punching bags ever Dynamax in Game 1? I've already closed the tab, but I don't think they did. Dracozolt Dynamax into like Max Wormwind into Rillaboom could be an adjustment if we see the Rillaboom lead again this game. Right, because then you also lower Rillaboom's attack stat, and it's not doing as much damage with the Drum Solo. It's not like there's a clear amulet in this game. Well, let's see. Dracozolt does lead again, this time with Hippowdon against Klefki and Rillaboom. Sandstream is up. Rillaboom Gigantamaxes. Dracozolt does not Dynamax, it just goes for the Flamethrower again. Klefki sets Reflect. Rillaboom goes straight for a Drum Solo to take out Hippowdon. I can see Klefki's last move being Rain Dance. I don't think we saw it click Reflect, Thunder Wave, Light Screen, and then just keep clicking Reflect over and over, which implies that it doesn't have an attack. I could see it being Rain Dance. Dhelmise is here. Ooh, Dhelmise goes for Ally Switch. Klefki just sets the Light Screen. Rillaboom will take this Flamethrower now. Oh, it gets burned, though. That's another benefit to Flamethrower, I guess. Went for a Max Quake into Dracozolt, but it does get the special defense boost and give that to Klefki as well, but it doesn't do much damage to the Dhelmise, especially after the burn. I was a little bit surprised to still not see Dracozolt Dynamax, but it's doing okay this game. Rain Dance confirmed on the Klefki. Takes away the Sand Rush and weakens the Flamethrower, so it still doesn't KO Rillaboom. Max Quake back doesn't KO either because Rillaboom is burned, but it does a lot of damage to Dracozolt. Anchor Shot will chip the Klefki. Oh, was Rillaboom also not switching out last game because it had taken the Anchor Shot? I don't think it wants to switch out there anyway, so I'm not really worried about getting that right, but like I think the play is the same regardless, but I don't know if it was trapped or not. Gigantamax wears off. The punching bags still have their Dynamax available, so they still should have opportunities to turn this game around, but now Aromatisse switches in with a Grassy Seed to boost his defense. Really going with that bulky game plan here. Dhelmise is paralyzed again. Flamethrower into Rillaboom. It does not do much at all to Aromatisse. Aromatisse gets almost everything back with the terrain recovery. They brought Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet is here. It gets paralyzed. It takes a Moonblast. Dhelmise is fully paralyzed again. This poor Dhelmise. That is one rusty anchor. That's all I can say. That's what, 4 full paras this set? At least, maybe 5? Anyway. Klefki is just sitting there clicking useless moves again because it doesn't have an attack. Dhelmise takes a Moonblast pretty well, hits back with Anchor Shot. Not a ton of damage on the board generally here. Wobbuffet goes for Mirror Coat. Would be useful into the Aromatisse, but nothing targeted it. Dhelmise fully paralyzed. I think you would see Quick Claw activate regardless, right? Like, I think it would be Quick Claw activates and then Dhelmise is fully paralyzed. So I think it... Oh, it's probably clicking Ally Switch. And that's probably what it was doing last game as well. I assumed Protect, but we know now that it has Ally Switch. It's probably clicking Ally Switch so that the Moonblast will go into Wobbuffet, and Wobbuffet can use Mirror Coat. That would be a really funny tech. It's too bad it fails because of the full para. Dhelmise just takes the Moonblast again. Of course, the Espurr are definitely trapped here because Wobbuffet is definitely... surely running Shadow Tag. So we are just kind of stuck in this position right now with the Aromatisse being the only Pokemon doing significant damage. The Dhelmise is able to do a little bit, but it's going for Ally Switch to try to get the Wobbuffet to do damage. It's, I guess, a smart way to play this, but the Aromatisse now shows Disable, so Wobbuffet won't be able to click Mirror Coat anymore. This is not a kind of game I expected to see, especially early in the season, but alright. Now that Wobbuffet can't click Mirror Coat, it will be pressured out. Dracozolt is back. Moonblast goes into Dhelmise, doesn't quite KO. Anchor Shot does some damage back to Aromatisse. But hopefully there's some real damage coming out now that Dracozolt is here. Still no Dynamax, but Dhelmise will Ally Switch to give the Dracozolt some cover. And it is Special Dracozolt. It goes for Discharge, not Bolt Beak. Discharge Dracozolt. What is Dracozolt's special attack stat? Bolt Beak is the very first move I think about for this Pokemon, but it goes for Discharge. It really doesn't do very much damage, unfortunately for them, to Klefki or Aromatisse. It does take out their own Dhelmise, so it's Dracozolt and Wobbuffet against the world now. Never mind, it's Wobbuffet against the world, as Dracozolt drops to a Moonblast. Might have wanted to, I don't know if the Dracozolt had Protect, but might have wanted, if they could, to even just switch it out, bring Pivot Wobbuffet back in and get one more Anchor Shot into Aromatisse, and then Rillaboom is massively weakened, and maybe Dracozolt still gets a chance to put in work. Klefki doesn't have an attack. We don't know what their last Pokemon is. Good chance it's Ferrothorn. But that still doesn't take a Flamethrower very well, even in rain. I think this is totally winnable for the punching bags if they pivot Dracozolt back out that turn. But instead it drops to a Moonblast. And Wobbuffet is here. And fully paralyzed, of course. Aromatisse sets Trick Room. And uses Ally Switch. Guys, what are we doing here? I don't even have anything to say about... Okay, there's a Moonblast, finally. Mirror Coat will take out Aromatisse. And it is Ferrothorn, last Pokemon. and it just goes for Leech Seed. It could just use the residual damage to win. It's not an amazing viewing experience, but I guess it is the optimal way to play. We see Wobbuffet Dynamax. I repeat, we see Wobbuffet Dynamax. It can use Max Knuckle now because counter is a physical attack. It does a whopping 6% to this Ferrothorn. But hey, that is +1 attack Wobbuffet now. Let's see what the next Max Knuckle can do. It goes for Mindstorm for some reason instead. 6% with a crit. That might be the only time I've ever seen a Wobbuffet get a crit. Now it goes for Max Guard. If you're playing this out, why don't... I mean, you should play this out. Forfeiting is technically not allowed in the PDL for stat tracking reasons, but why would you not click Max Knuckle all 3 times? I guess because you don't actually want to KO the Ferrothorn, because if you do that and KO the Rillaboom, then you get into an absolute nightmare endgame with Klefki, where they just have to click all their moves until one of them loses to struggle damage. But you know, I would play that out. But I guess I can't blame them if they don't want to. We got to see Dynamax Wobbuffet in week 1, though. That's crazy. And there's still one set left. There is still the Nothing Burger taking on the Bashful Bisharps. The Bisharps have also brought their weather mode. They have Arctozolt with Ninetales. Have they brought Bolt Beak? Who knows at this point? We'll find out together. If so, they're also boosting it with Tapu Koko Electric Terrain. The Nothing Burger bringing exactly what I want to see from this team. Ditto, Mew, and Silvally. The sky is the limit for those Pokemon. I'm not going to try to guess what they're here to do. I mean, I know what Ditto does, but... it does look like they want to play a Trick Room game plan. They have Runerigus and Slowbro, which can set Trick Room and hit pretty hard in it. Togetic gives them redirection and helping hand. So probably slow Silvally, slow Mew. But, I mean, I just want to see those Pokemon go crazy. I'm not going to try to guess what their plan is to do it, except that it sure looks like it involves Trick Room. On the other side, we have, presumably, Slush Rush, hopefully Bolt Beak, Arctozolt. With both of the partners that boost it. Celesteela actually can be a massive problem for the Nothing Burger, because it can pretty well sit on the field against a lot of what Slowbro and Runerigus want to throw at it. Celesteela could be very valuable for stalling out Trick Room. Though, who knows with Mew and Silvally on the other side. Then they have Terrakion, they have Slowking. Slowking can disrupt a Trick Room game plan. Terrakion can... I don't know, let's just watch. Runerigus leading with Mew against Ninetales, and there it is, Best Boy Arctozolt. That's shiny Arctozolt? That's pretty cool. I don't know if I've seen it before. It is shiny, right? It's not just like a graphics error. I think it did the shiny animation. That's kind of neat. Alright, so Arctozolt is threatening big damage. How does the Nothing Burger deal with it? Runerigus protects. The Bolt Beak goes into Mew, but it doesn't quite KO. Mew eats an Aguav Berry for some recovery. We see Aurora Veil from the Ninetales. And Mew is the one clicking the Trick Room here. So they do have Trick Room up, but the other side has Aurora Veil. If they brought Celesteela, they should be able to stall this out pretty easily, barring a big surprise. Of course, Mew is kind of the big surprise Pokemon. Instead, we see the Tapu Koko switching in Trick Room. That's interesting. Runerigus Dynamaxes, throws a Max Knuckle at Tapu Koko. That won't do a ton of damage. It was, of course, meant to hit the Arctozolt. Doesn't do so much to Tapu Koko. Does give Runerigus an attack boost, but that actually looks like a pretty sharp switch from the Bisharps after all. Mew uses Psychic Fangs to break the Aurora Veil. Psychic Fangs works like Brick Break, doing that damage and also clearing screens. That is a cool tech on that Mew. Ninetales throws off a Blizzard. It's weakness policy Runerigus, so it gets boosted by that. It's now +3 attack. Nothing is frozen. Mew is still not quite KO'd. Zapu Koko here Dynamaxes. Which is pretty brave, because that is not taking a ground-type attack from +3 Runerigus. But Runerigus goes for Max Knuckle into Ninetales, boosts itself some more. I realize Mew is also getting an attack boost, actually, so that Psychic Fangs will hit harder, and it might well have another physical attack or two as well. In fact, we might see right now. Nope, it's just Life Dew. Doing what it can to keep itself and Runerigus healthy. They clicked Max Lightning into Runerigus. Did they think it would switch out after it Dynamaxed? I don't really get that one, but okay. The Tapu Koko switch-in worked pretty... Okay, they said, oops, maybe it was a misclick or something. The Tapu Koko switch-in worked pretty well that first turn, but they haven't really built on it amazingly. And now they have Tapu Koko and Arctozolt on the field with 2 turns of Trick Room remaining. I think they probably didn't. I think they probably have Terrakion in the back. I think if you brought Celesteela or Slowking to this game, we'd probably see it here. Runerigus goes for another Max Knuckle, really loving those attack boosts, and this one at +4 does one-shot the Arctozolt. Mew just goes for another Life Dew. Surely Tapu Koko could knock out the Mew here. It does. But Runerigus is at +5 attack and still has a turn of Trick Room left. I believe its Dynamax wears off, yeah. But, I mean, if it has Earthquake, that just takes 2 KOs here. Terrakion confirmed last Pokemon for the Bisharps. They could protect, of course. Huh. Togetic switches out to Silvally, which shows this the fire type. I'm not sure why you give away that information here, especially with Runerigus protecting on the last turn of its own Trick Room. I feel like Runerigus should have been able to just end the game there, right? Well, it has Protect and a Fighting type attack. Does it not have Earthquake? Still, though, you'd think it would be able to get off a big attack at least. Instead, Trick Room is over. Tapu Koko Dazzling Gleam chips these Pokemon. Terrakion Rock Slide knocks out Silvally. Does Runerigus flinch? Nope, there's the Earthquake. I don't know why they didn't do that last turn. Like, with the, you can cover for Protect, but, I mean, the opponent can't really do anything else to punish you if they Protect, so I don't know why you don't take your chances there. But, in any case, Runerigus is still able to clutch up and power through here. I don't know what Pokemon are getting into the thumbnail. I don't even think Runerigus is going to make it, and that's crazy. What an amazing week all the way through. Anyway, time for Game 2 in this set. The Trick Room, once again, making a big difference there. Let's see if the Bisharps find some adjustments. Again, the Slowking can be disruptive into Trick Room, can reverse it or shut it down. I think the Celesteela is also very useful for stalling out of Trick Room mode here. Although now that they know it's Fire-type Silvally, they'll have to be prepared for that. But they actually lead with Arctozolt and Ninetales again, this time against Runerigus and Slowbro. So the Nothing Burger definitely look like they're trying to double down on the Trick Room. Runerigus protects. Slowbro just gets one shot by Bolt Beak. Yeah, that's a bit of an issue leading Slowbro here instead of Mew. Maybe they expected a different lead from the other side, considering how well the lead worked out for them last game. That makes sense if they were trying to adjust to something, but yeah, Mew, not weak to the Bolt Beak, able to survive it. Slowbro, not so lucky. We see Ditto now, but it transforms into Ninetales. Imposter Ditto always transforms into what's immediately across from it. You'd probably rather turn into Arctozolt, but they didn't have a choice here. It is Ninetales. Runerigus goes for the Dynamax without Trick Room. Ditto just drops to a Bolt Beak. There's that Bolt Beak going crazy finally. Ninetales gives Runerigus its weakness policy boost, but the Aurora Veil's still up. Ninetales takes a Max Knuckle. For those of you who didn't play Sword and Shield, Max Knuckle because it boosts attack and Max Ooze because it boosts special attack, that's the poison type one, have lower base powers than other Max moves. For some reason, Game Freak didn't think to do the same thing with Max Airstream, so it's just the best Max move, but yeah, Max Knuckle, especially with no stab, it's just not going to hit as hard as another Max move would. This Runerigus really enjoys accumulating these boosts, but it does mean that the damage into the Ninetales is a little bit lackluster. Even though this is Gen 8 and we're playing in Hail and there's no snow defense boost, there is still the Aurora Veil, of course. I mean, Ninetales still doesn't take another one, but it does get another chance to throw off a Blizzard here. Huh. Okay, it does get another chance to throw off a Blizzard, and of course Togetic can't redirect that because it's a spread move. However, Ninetales actually Dynamaxes, which means all of its attacks will become single target as max moves, and Togetic actually can redirect here. And it does go for it. In front of Blizzard Ninetales, Togetic goes for the Follow Me, and it's so bulky with the Eviolite, it actually survives a Bolt Beak, and then a Max Hailstorm. And Runerigus is going to get another chance to sweep, but it is the last Pokemon already. It's below half HP in Dynamax, outside of Trick Room. Tapu Koko switches in. Runerigus max guards through what I think is his last turn of Dynamax, yeah. I don't think it takes the Max Hailstorm now, does it? Alright, they tried to get the Runerigus sweep going again, but not setting up the Trick Room. We've seen that a fair bit already this week. Not setting up the Trick Room really made the difference there. I imagine we see the Mew again in Game 3, but we are now going to Game 3. Let's find out. Ditto lead with Silvally. Ditto lead. Okay, I think we're about to see Arctozolt in this slot. Leading Ditto is a bold play because, again, Ditto transforms into whatever is immediately across from it. So you want to have a good idea of what that is, or you're just taking your chances, but it's a bit of a gamble. That said, I believe I've closed the tabs, but I believe the Bisharps have led Ninetales in this slot and Arctozolt in this slot, both of the first 2 games. So the Nothing Burger have called that, and they're leading Ditto in this slot, looking to transform it into Arctozolt turn 1. And then Silvally can threaten Ninetales because it's a fire type. I think they probably got it. Let's see. It's Arctozolt. Ditto turns into Arctozolt. That's so cool. Dynamax, Arctozolt Dynamaxes. Ditto doesn't. Arctozolt throws off a Max Knuckle. Also, Arctozolt moved before Ditto, so Ditto is not running a Choice Scarf. They're speed tying. Ditto copies all of the stats of whatever it's transformed into except HP. For that reason, most Ditto run a Choice Scarf so that they know that they're faster than what they transform into, unless it's also Scarfed. But we know that that's not the case here because choice items don't work while the Pokemon is Dynamaxed. So even if the Arctozolt has a Scarf, it is not using it right now. So Ditto does not have a Scarf. It is just speed tying with Arctozolt and anything else it transforms into at any given point. That said, it does take the Max Knuckle. Ooh, and it goes for a low kick back. Ooh. The lead Ditto is so cool. It hasn't fainted yet. It could win a speed tie and still put in work. Low kick failed there because weight-based moves always fail into Dynamaxed Pokemon. Dynamax has a lot of weird interactions that if you didn't play Sword and Shield, I'm not going to try to explain all at once, but they can be kind of mind-bending. We'll surely encounter more of them over the course of the season. We've seen Fake Out fail into a Dynamax Pokemon. That's also a thing. But yeah, moves that use the Pokemon's weight to calculate their damage, like Low Kick, Grass Knot, Heavy Slam, do not work into Dynamax Pokemon at all. There's an immunity, blanket immunity for all Dynamax Pokemon to that specific kind of move that uses weight to calculate damage, which makes moves like Low Kick and Grass Knot significantly worse in Sword and Shield than they are in other generations like Scarlet and Violet. So it is nice that we're getting one of those weird Dynamax interactions out of the way in Week 1. We'll probably see some more over the course of the season, but I was so hyped about this Ditto, and it did no damage turn 1. It'll still get another chance, maybe. Silvally actually just goes for Parting Shot into Ninetales. Instead of like a Fire-type multi-attack or something, it's just weakening that Blizzard. Fair enough. Pivoting in Runerigus, once again with no Trick Room, though. Runerigus protects. Ditto wins the speed tie. It crits Ninetales with a Bolt Beak. Ninetales is a Sash. Unfortunate. Ninetales survives. Not that I'm rooting for anyone in particular, but I was rooting for that Ditto. That was a really cool play, leading Ditto into the Arctozolt slot and getting the call correct. Unfortunately, it didn't manage to take any KOs, although it would have, but for the Sash Ninetales there. Arctozolt, by the way, has gotten itself to +2 attack with those Max Knuckles. Low Kick might not be great in this format, but Max Knuckle attack boosts are still pretty valuable on your fast physical attacker that's probably using Slush Rush to boost that Bolt Beak, which, by the way, works like Vicious Rend, more damage if it goes first. So if they don't manage to get Trick Room up, Arctozolt should still go crazy even when the Dynamax wears off. And yeah, it did overcome the Ditto there. So looking pretty good for the Bisharps. Togekiss comes in. Runerigus Dynamaxes, okay. It is offset by 2 turns. It goes for Max Guard, but because it's just protected, there was a chance to fail, and it did fail. However, so that won't stop a Blizzard, but it is -1 Blizzard. Dynamax Weakness Policy Runerigus, you'd probably almost rather take it. And Arctozolt will still not attack Runerigus here because of the Follow Me. Instead, Max Hailstorm lands into Togekiss. It's a +2, so it KOs. That is now single target Blizzard. Still doesn't do too much damage at -2. Ninetales is not crazy strong. Runerigus does get its weakness policy, which is probably what it wants from this turn. It's a little bit awkward with no Trick Room up. They also didn't bring a Trick Room setter, assuming Runerigus itself doesn't have it, and it has never yet played like it has. So it'll need Silvally to give it whatever cover it can. I mean, multi-attack is pretty threatening here. Except Silvally just drops to a Bolt Beak, so never mind. Yeah, the Blizzard is wearing down the Runerigus pretty quickly. Max Knuckle and Ninetales is an attack boost, sure, but Arctozolt is still at full HP. We know it has an Ice-type attack. Terrakion is here. Arctozolt switches out. Arctozolt in Hail. I think I said Snow earlier, but it's Hail in this generation. Arctozolt in Hail at +2 attack, and we know it has an Ice-type attack. And it switches out against Runerigus. And that Ice attack is probably... I don't know what Arctozolt gets. Does it get Icicle Crash or Ice Punch? It's not going to be like Ice-type Low Kick or something. I don't even think that exists. I really don't know why they made that switch. they might let the Nothing Burger back into the game. Terrakion clicks Rock Slide, but you cannot flinch a Dynamax Pokemon. They probably just did that because Runerigus is immune to fighting, so Rock Slide was the best they had. Runerigus gets a chance to throw off an attack here. Lucky for them, it's not Earthquake because Runerigus is still Dynamax. Instead, it's Max Quake, taking out the Terrakion. Arctozolt should still win this, right? But also, it should have done that last turn. The Hail is over, but Runerigus is slow. I think Runerigus drops to Tapu Koko Dazzling Gleam anyway. Yeah. Well, the mystery of what was going on with that Arctozolt in the last couple turns is unsolved. I think the Mew was probably kind of the key to this one for the Nothing Burger. Because they tried Slowbro as the Trick Room setter in game 2, and it dropped to Bolt Beak immediately because of the water typing. But we know that Mew takes a Bolt Beak, and getting Trick Room set up was the difference between crazy Runerigus sweep and Runerigus not quite being able to get the job done. But it's week 1. People are feeling their teams out. We're going to see some interesting texts from a lot of these coaches over the rest of the season. I'm still not over that Ditto lead. I'm still not over a lot of things. This was a crazy opening week for the PDL season. This is maybe the best I've seen. A lot of fun to cover for sure, and I'm looking forward to the next several weeks of more of this. Hopefully not necessarily running quite as long every single time, but there was a lot to talk about here. And no doubt there will be as we keep diving back into these Sword and Shield formats over the weeks to come. Anyway, see you next time.